The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom creaked open, and a tense silence fell over the audience as Clara, 67, slowly walked in. Her face carried the lines of age, but her eyes still held a quiet strength. She clutched her handbag tightly, the same way she had held on to hope for the past 13 years. Today, however, that hope was being twisted against her. At the plaintiff's table sat Serena, her estranged daughter. Dressed in an expensive suit, her face was cold and determined. Sitting beside her, a sharp-tongued attorney shuffled papers, ready to strike. Serena's voice cut through the courtroom as she pointed directly at her mother. "Your Honor," she began, her words dripping with indignation, "this woman, my mother, stole my children from me. For 13 years, she has kept Isaac, Olivia, and Sophia away without my consent. That is kidnapping." Gasps rippled through the small crowd of onlookers. Reporters scribbled frantically, sensing the scandal of a mother accused by her own daughter. Clara sat still, her hands trembling, but her voice, when it came, was steady. "They were never stolen," Clara whispered to herself, though the words echoed louder in her heart than in the room. The judge raised an eyebrow and glanced at Clara, then at Serena. "We will hear both sides. But this is a grave accusation, Miss Serena. Do you understand the weight of what you are alleging?" Serena nodded without hesitation, her expression unmoved. She leaned back in her chair, confident, as if victory was already hers. Clara, meanwhile, felt as though the walls of the courtroom were closing in. For years she had sacrificed everything to protect those children, yet here she was, painted as a criminal by the very woman who had abandoned them. And as the proceedings began, Clara realized this was not just a legal battle. It was a fight for truth, for love, and for the only family she had left. The courtroom grew tense as Serena's lawyer continued his accusations, his voice sharp and rehearsed. For 13 years, this woman manipulated the situation for her own benefit. She pretended to be the savior of 3 children, while in reality, she deprived their biological mother of her rights. Clara has stolen years of motherhood from Serena. Clara's hands clenched on the wooden table. Each word felt like a dagger, rewriting history into a cruel lie. She rose slowly, her frail frame trembling, yet her eyes shone with defiance. "That is not the truth," Clara said firmly, her voice breaking through the courtroom murmurs. "I did not steal anyone's children. I raised them because she abandoned them." Serena scoffed loudly, shaking her head with exaggerated disbelief. "Abandoned? You're insane. You think anyone will believe an old woman over a mother." Her lawyer smirked, clearly confident the momentum was theirs. But then Clara did something no one expected. With deliberate care, she reached into her handbag and pulled out an envelope, worn, yellowed, and fragile with age. She held it up high, her voice carrying through the room. "This," Clara declared, her hand steady despite the pounding in her chest, "is the truth you've all been ignoring. Inside this envelope is proof that Serena didn't just walk away by accident. She chose to leave, and she did not return, not for weeks, not for months, not even for 13 years. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, whispers rippling like a wave. The judge leaned forward, his expression suddenly sharp with interest. Serena's face paled for just a moment before she forced a bitter smile. "That's nothing but a trick," Serena hissed under her breath, but her clenched fists betrayed her fear. Clara's voice softened, but it carried a weight heavier than accusation. It carried sorrow. "I never wanted to stand here like this, Serena. You're my daughter, but you left me with those babies, and I had no choice but to become their mother. Now, if the court will allow me, I'll show everyone the truth." As she prepared to open the envelope, the entire courtroom seemed to lean in, waiting for the secret it contained, one that could shatter Serena's case and reveal the darkness behind her sudden return. The judge adjusted his glasses and gestured for Clara to proceed. The entire courtroom fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. With trembling fingers, Clara carefully opened the weathered envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, the ink faded but the words still painfully clear. Her voice quavered at first, but then grew stronger as she began to read aloud. "Mama, I can't do this anymore. These kids are too much for me. I'll leave them with you just for a few weeks, until I get my life together. Don't call me. I'll come back when I'm ready." Signed at the bottom, in Serena's unmistakable handwriting. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Even the judge leaned back in his chair, lips pressed into a thin line. Serena's confident smile faltered, her eyes darting nervously toward her lawyer, who quickly snatched at his papers as if looking for an escape. Clara lowered the letter, tears shimmering in her eyes. 13 years ago, Serena handed me Isaac, Olivia, and Sophia with nothing but this bag of dirty clothes, she said, pointing to the tattered duffel she had kept all these years as evidence. She promised she'd be back in a few weeks. Weeks became months. Months became years. And she never returned. The memories flooded her voice with raw emotion. I sat with Isaac through nights of fever. I held Olivia when bullies made her cry at school. I helped Sophia with every science project, every scraped knee, every birthday cake. I was there for every parent-teacher conference, every doctor's appointment, every single milestone. And do you know where Serena was? Nowhere. She vanished. Olivia, sitting in the gallery, wiped tears from her eyes, while Isaac clenched his jaw, anger flickering across his face. Sophia buried her face in her hands. The children knew this truth already, but hearing it spoken in court, with the letter as proof, was like reopening a wound that had never healed. The judge turned toward Serena, his gaze sharp. "Miss Serena, do you dispute the authenticity of this letter? It appears to be signed in your own handwriting." Serena's lips parted, but no words came. She looked cornered, her mask of confidence cracking under the weight of undeniable evidence. And for the first time since the trial began, Clara felt the tide turning, not just in her favor, but in favor of the truth she had carried alone for 13 long, painful years. The years passed in a blur of responsibilities and sacrifices. Clara, now in her late 50s, had aged faster than she should have. Every wrinkle etched into her face was a testament to sleepless nights spent worrying over bills, illnesses, and how to give the 3 children a stable life. Yet through all the struggles, she had never once complained, because Isaac, Olivia, and Sophia had become her entire world. But as the children grew older, Clara realized that her role as their caretaker needed to be made official. There were forms she couldn't sign, doctors questioning her authority, and schools demanding proof of custody. Every time she wrote "grandmother" on a form, she felt the sting of her vulnerability. What if Serena suddenly reappeared and tried to take them back? The thought haunted her. She had no faith that Serena would return as a fit mother, but the law might not see it that way. Clara couldn't let her grandchildren be torn away from the only stable home they had ever known. So, one crisp autumn morning, Clara walked into the courthouse with trembling hands but unwavering resolve. She wore her best dress, though it had been mended more times than she could count, and clutched a folder thick with school reports, medical records, and photographs, proof of the life she had built for the children. Standing before the judge, she spoke with quiet determination. "Your Honor, I am not here to replace their mother. I am here because for 13 years I have been their mother. I've been the one to hold their hands through sickness, guide them through school, and keep food on the table. These children deserve stability. They deserve protection. And I will give my life to ensure they have both." The judge, after reviewing the evidence, looked over his glasses at Clara. His expression softened. "Mrs. Clara, your devotion is evident. The law requires proof of abandonment, and this court has seen sufficient evidence of that. Your petition for legal guardianship is hereby granted." The gavel struck, echoing in the chamber like thunder. Clara's breath caught in her throat, tears streaming down her cheeks. For the first time in over a decade, she felt the crushing weight on her shoulders lift, replaced by a fragile but undeniable sense of victory. That evening, she sat the children down at their small kitchen table. With a trembling smile, she told them, "It's official now. No one can take you away from me." Isaac wrapped his arms around her shoulders. Olivia leaned her head against Clara's chest, whispering, "We know, Grandma. You've always been our mom." And Sophia, the youngest, simply said through her tears, "We're safe now." In that moment, Clara realized the truth. Family wasn't something that could be dictated by blood or erased by abandonment. Family was built in the everyday acts of love, sacrifice, and devotion, and she had given them all of that and more. The courtroom was silent. Every eye fixed on Clara as she carefully placed a thick folder of documents on the judge's desk. She explained in a calm but steady voice that, before the trial began, she had hired a private investigator. What he uncovered painted a very different picture of Serena's sudden reappearance after 13 years of silence. The report was damning. Serena and her husband had been living far beyond their means, maxed out credit cards, overdue mortgage payments, and personal loans piling up like a house of cards. Their financial world was crumbling, and the desperation in their choices was evident. But the investigator had also discovered something else. Just months earlier, Serena had learned that her 3 children, Isaac, Olivia, and Sophia, had been named beneficiaries of a substantial inheritance left behind by their late grandfather. The money, carefully placed in a trust, would be released when the children turned 21. The timing was no coincidence. Clara raised her voice, trembling with both anger and sorrow. "Your Honor, this is why Serena is here. Not for love, not for family, but for money. She abandoned these children for 13 years, and now, only when there is wealth involved, she remembers she's a mother. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Serena's face paled, her hands twisting nervously on the table. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge held up a hand, demanding silence. Clara continued, holding up a copy of the trust papers. I have struggled, sacrificed, and done everything to provide these children a stable life. Serena did nothing, and now she dares to return, driven by greed, to rip apart the family we built together. Isaac, sitting behind Clara, clenched his fists in anger. Olivia leaned on her grandmother's shoulder, tears streaming down her face. Sophia stared at Serena with a look of pure betrayal, her young eyes already old with disappointment. The judge studied Serena carefully, his voice stern. Miss Serena, these documents, combined with your history of absence, raise serious concerns about your intentions. This court will not allow children to be treated as pawns in a financial game. Serena tried to speak, but her words faltered. The truth was laid bare for all to see. At that moment, Clara felt both vindicated and heartbroken. Vindicated because the evidence exposed Serena's selfish motives, but heartbroken because it confirmed what she had feared all along. Serena did not return for love, but for greed. And deep down, Clara realized this battle was not just about custody, it was about protecting her grandchildren from a mother who valued money over them. The tension in the courtroom was suffocating as the judge announced that he would now hear from the children themselves. The air seemed to thicken. Even the spectators leaned forward, sensing this was the turning point of the case. Clara clasped her hands tightly, silently praying that her grandchildren would have the courage to speak their truth. The bailiff called Isaac first. At 20 years old, he carried himself with quiet strength, though his eyes betrayed the weight of years of responsibility far beyond his age. Standing tall before the judge, Isaac's voice was steady but heavy with emotion. Your Honor, he began, glancing briefly at Serena before turning back to Clara. This woman gave me life, but she is not my mother. The only person who has ever been a mother to me is Clara. She was there for every school project, every doctor's appointment, every late-night panic when I thought I would fail. She gave me discipline when I needed it and love when I deserved none. I don't want to live with Serena. She's a stranger. My home, my family, is with Clara. Gasps and murmurs filled the room, but Isaac's words carried a clarity that cut through the noise like glass. Serena shifted uncomfortably, her face tight with restrained anger. Next, Olivia was called. At 18, she had inherited Clara's resilience, but her voice trembled as she clutched the microphone. Your Honor, she whispered at first, then grew stronger. Serena, she's just a name to me. She was never there when I was sick, when I graduated middle school, when I cried myself to sleep. Clara was the one who tucked me in at night, who told me I was worth something when I doubted myself. To me, Serena isn't my mother, she's just a stranger trying to claim us now that it benefits her. My real mother has always been Clara. Clara's eyes brimmed with tears. She tried to stay composed, but the sight of Olivia defending their bond broke her heart and mended it all at once. Finally, Sophia was called. At only 16, she was the youngest, but she carried herself with remarkable courage. She took a deep breath, her voice soft but unwavering. I don't remember what it's like to be loved by Serena, because I never felt it. Not once. Clara has been everything for me, my grandmother, my mother, my best friend. She gave me love I didn't even know I needed. And the truth is, I don't want to leave her. I only want to stay with Clara. Her words, though simple, struck the courtroom like a hammer. Even the judge leaned back, visibly moved by the raw sincerity of her testimony. For the first time, Serena's mask cracked. Her lips trembled as she struggled to maintain composure, but the weight of her children's rejection pressed down harder than any evidence Clara could present. She had hoped to sway them with promises, perhaps even with guilt, but instead, their voices united in a devastating chorus of truth. The judge's gavel struck lightly, calling for order. His eyes softened as he looked at the three young faces before him. Your testimonies will weigh heavily in this court's decision, he said gravely. As the children returned to their seats, Clara reached for their hands. Isaac on her left, Olivia and Sophia on her right, they leaned into her, a picture of unity no legal argument could undo. At that moment, everyone in the courtroom could see it clearly. This was not a family broken apart, but one built stronger through love, sacrifice, and truth. The courtroom had already been shaken by the children's heartfelt testimonies, but Clara knew the decisive blow had yet to come. She reached into her neatly organized folder, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. Your Honor, Clara said firmly, her voice carrying across the silent chamber, I have one final piece of evidence. This should end any doubt about what truly happened 13 years ago. She handed a yellowed, carefully preserved document to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The courtroom held its breath. Serena's face visibly paled. Her lawyer shifted nervously in his chair, sensing the danger before the contents were even revealed. The judge adjusted his glasses and began to read aloud. His voice was calm, but each word landed like a hammer blow. I, Serena, last name, willingly and voluntarily relinquish all maternal rights over my children, Isaac, Olivia, and Sophia. I acknowledge that I am unable to provide for them emotionally or financially. I entrust full care to Clara, last name, who has agreed to raise them in my absence. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The document bore Serena's unmistakable signature and the date from 13 years earlier. Clara raised her chin, her eyes unwavering. Serena left me with those children, Your Honor. Not for a week, not for a month, for 13 long years. I did not steal them. I saved them. The judge turned his sharp gaze toward Serena. Miss Serena, is this your signature? Serena opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted toward her lawyer, who sat frozen, unable to fabricate an escape from this devastating proof. Finally, her shoulders collapsed as tears began to stream down her face. Yes, she whispered, voice breaking. It's mine. The courtroom erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. The judge struck his gavel, restoring silence. Then how, he demanded sternly, do you justify accusing your mother of kidnapping when you voluntarily surrendered your rights in writing? Serena buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The facade she had built, the story of being a victim, the image of a mother robbed of her children, crumbled in an instant. Her lawyer tried to interject, but the judge silenced him with a single raised hand. The three children looked on, not with triumph but with sorrow. Isaac clenched his fists. Olivia shook her head in disbelief, and Sophia leaned closer to Clara, seeking comfort. For them, this was not a victory. It was confirmation of the abandonment they had felt all their lives. Clara, though vindicated, felt no joy in Serena's humiliation. She simply placed a comforting hand over Sophia's, whispering softly, It's over now, my dear. The truth is out. The judge leaned back in his chair, his tone heavy with finality. This court has heard the testimonies of the children and reviewed indisputable written evidence. Miss Serena, your claims have no foundation in law or in truth. At that moment, the outcome was clear. Serena's case had collapsed entirely, not under Clara's arguments alone, but under the weight of her own past choices. The gavel struck with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. The judge's voice was calm but firm, carrying the weight of finality. After reviewing the testimonies of the children, the evidence presented, and the signed document relinquishing parental rights, this court rules that Serena has forfeited all claims of custody. Furthermore, a 5-year restraining order will be issued to protect Clara and the grandchildren from any further distress or harassment. A hush fell over the room. Serena slumped in her chair, her once defiant posture now broken. Her lawyer gathered his papers in silence, avoiding her gaze. For Serena, the battle she had started ended not with victory, but with public exposure and defeat. Clara sat quietly, her hands folded on the table. She did not smile, nor did she gloat. Justice had been served, but her heart was heavy. To see her own daughter fall so low was a wound deeper than any courtroom victory could heal. As the session adjourned, the children embraced Clara, relief flooding their faces. Isaac whispered, We're free now, Grandma. She can't hurt us anymore. Olivia clung to her, tears streaming down her cheeks, while Sophia buried her face in Clara's shoulder. Serena, meanwhile, remained seated, her tears staining the papers in front of her. She looked smaller than ever, consumed by the consequences of her own choices. Clara approached her slowly. The bailiff shifted, wary, but Clara raised a gentle hand. It's all right, she said softly. She reached into her bag and placed a small bundle of items on the table beside Serena, a few groceries, some basic supplies. You may not believe it, Serena, Clara said, her voice steady but laced with sorrow, but I don't want to see you starve or homeless. These are just essentials, nothing more. From now on, you must take responsibility for your own life. The children are not yours to claim until they choose it, and only if you truly change. Serena lifted her tear-filled eyes, stunned by the kindness she did not deserve. For a moment, words failed her. She simply lowered her head, ashamed. Clara turned back to her grandchildren, wrapping her arms around them as they left the courtroom together. Though the betrayal had cut deeply, Clara chose not to let bitterness define her. She knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but she also knew she had already built a true family, one forged not by blood alone, but by love, sacrifice, and resilience. Outside the courthouse, the autumn wind brushed against Clara's face. She inhaled deeply, feeling both exhausted and renewed. This chapter of pain had finally closed. Ahead of them lay a future where healing could begin, where Isaac, Olivia, and Sophia could step into adulthood free from the shadows of Serena's choices. And Clara, though scarred, walked beside them with quiet strength, carrying not just the weight of justice, but also the grace of forgiveness.